I still remember the moment I checked my bank account, staring at the number I had dreamt of my entire life, $1 million. I'd imagined the rush of joy, the wave of relief, the sensation of finally making it. But instead, I felt nothing. I was exhausted, completely burnt out. The truth that no one tells you about your first million is that it doesn't come with fireworks. At least not when you crawl through blood, sweat and tears to get there. But there was something else, something unexpected, that made all the difference. The lessons I learned on that rocky road to 1 million made the path beyond it so much easier. But let me start at the beginning. I grew up in a tiny town, the kind you drive through in 5 minutes and forget the name of by the time you're on the highway again. For us, $1 million might as well have been $1 billion, completely out of reach. My parents were hardworking, but life was paycheck to paycheck. By the time I was 10, I knew I wanted more. I didn't want to struggle to pay bills. I didn't want to hear my mom cry in the kitchen late at night, wondering how she'd afford Christmas presents. That desperation burned inside me. In high school, while my friends were out partying, I was working late shifts at the local diner. I saved every penny, every tip, every dollar I could scrape together. I thought, naively, that if I just worked harder than everyone else, success would follow. But there's a bitter truth about life that no one tells you when you're young. Hard work isn't enough. After college, I took a job in sales, because what better way to make money than commission, right? Wrong. I failed spectacularly. I was good at talking to people, but terrible at closing deals. Every rejection stung like a personal insult, and after 2 years of hustling, I had nothing to show for it but a stack of unpaid bills. I felt like a failure, like maybe the dream was too big, but the desperation, that deep gnawing need to break free from the life I was born into, was stronger than my failures. I quit my sales job and threw myself into entrepreneurship. I figured if no one was going to hand me $1 million, I'd build it myself. And that's where the real struggle began. Starting a business from scratch with no money, no connections, and no roadmap is like being thrown into the ocean with no life vest. Every day was a battle. I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, trying to get my e-commerce business off the ground. I'd invested every cent I had into inventory, advertising, and building a website, but the sales just weren't coming in. Every month, I watched my bank account dwindle closer to zero, and I felt like I was racing against time before everything collapsed. I was terrified. I barely slept. My relationships suffered. I wasn't eating right. I was obsessed, but I wasn't making progress. I'd read stories of entrepreneurs who hit it big in 6 months, but a year in, I was still struggling to make enough to cover my rent. Every day felt like I was climbing an endless mountain. And every night I wondered if I'd ever reach the top. And then, one night it happened. My phone buzzed with a notification. An order came through. Then another. And another. By the end of the night, I had made more in sales than I had in the entire previous month. The next morning, it was even better. The momentum I'd been chasing for over a year had finally arrived. But here's the thing about success. It doesn't solve all your problems. If anything, it creates new ones. Making my first million wasn't the relief I thought it would be. I'd reached my goal, but now I had a new set of problems. How do I keep the business growing? How do I deal with competitors? What about scaling? And the worst of all, what if I lose it? The fear of failure became even more intense. I became obsessed with reinvesting every penny back into the business, worried that one wrong move would send it all crumbling down. I was no longer just an entrepreneur, I was now a manager, a leader, responsible for employees, customers, and partners. The pressure was suffocating. The first million came, but it didn't bring peace. It brought more stress, more sleepless nights, more anxiety, but it also brought something else, clarity. Here's the lesson no one tells you. The hardest part about making your first million isn't the money itself. It's the mindset you have to develop to get there. Once I made that first million, I realized I'd been through the hardest part. The hustle, the grind, the constant self-doubt, that was the real challenge. The $1 million was just the result of surviving that fire. After that, something clicked. I realized the systems I had built, the processes, the marketing funnels, the customer acquisition strategies, those were scalable. I didn't need to work harder, I needed to work smarter. The endless grind I'd put myself through in the early days wasn't sustainable, but now I had the knowledge and experience to do things differently. I hired the right people. I automated what I could. I found mentors who had been where I was, and I learned from them. And most importantly, I shifted my focus from working in the business to working on the business. Suddenly, everything got easier. I wasn't chasing after every sale, stressing over every decision. I had a plan, a strategy, and a team. The business started growing on its own, and I found myself doing less and earning more. It felt surreal at first, but this is the secret that no one tells you. Once you've built the foundation, scaling becomes effortless. But here's the part that's hardest to admit. Making your first million comes at a cost. The emotional toll is real. I lost friends along the way, people who didn't understand why I couldn't hang out or party like I used to. My relationship with my family became strained. I was so consumed by the business that I neglected the people who mattered most. There were days when I questioned if it was all worth it. Was the money really worth sacrificing my peace of mind, my health, my happiness? But then I remembered why I started. I wasn't doing this for the money, I was doing it for the freedom. The freedom to choose my life, to live on my terms, to break the cycle of struggle that had defined my family for generations. That's what kept me going. And eventually, that's what gave me the peace I'd been searching for. After that first million, the rest came easier. I diversified my investments, started new businesses, and began to mentor others. The fear of losing it all faded, replaced by a quiet confidence that I could rebuild if I had to. The lessons I learned during those dark, grueling years became my greatest assets. But more than that, I found balance. I stopped chasing every dollar and started prioritizing my time, my relationships, my health. I made time for the people I loved, for the things that made me happy outside of business. And that, more than anything, is what made the rest easy. I've learned that money is a tool, not the goal. The goal is freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what kind of life you want to create. The first million was a struggle, no doubt about it. But it was a struggle that forged me into the person I needed to become. It wasn't about the money, it was about the transformation. And once I made that shift, once I understood that the real power wasn't in the number, but in the mindset behind it, the rest of the journey became almost effortless. If you're in the trenches right now, grinding away and wondering if you'll ever break through, remember this: the struggle is temporary, but the lessons you learn along the way will serve you for a lifetime. Your first million will be the hardest, not because of the money itself, but because of who you have to become to earn it. But once you do, everything changes. It gets easier, you get smarter. You learn to work less and earn more. But most importantly, you realize that success isn't about the number in your bank account. It's about the freedom, the peace, and the joy that comes with living life on your terms. So keep pushing. Keep grinding. The struggle is worth it. Because once you break through, the rest will be easy.